This is Counterpoint, and I'm your host, Tanya Granick Allen. Good evening. Tonight, we're going to turn our attention to a deeply concerning issue that is affecting communities across the country: the alarming rise in anti Semitism in Canada. What was once considered isolated incidents are now becoming more frequent, more visible, and more threatening. From vandalism at synagogues to anti Semitic harassment in schools and online spaces, Jewish Canadians are increasingly reporting acts of hate that are leaving many feeling unsafe and unheard. Recent reports, including B'nai B'rith's 2024 audit of anti Semitic incidents, have revealed that Canada experienced a record number of cases last year and a 125% increase from 2022 to 2024. The Center for Israel and Jewish Affairs, known as CIJA, has described this as a national crisis. They, along with other advocacy organizations, are calling on Canadians and all levels of government to take stronger action against this rising tide. But the story is not just about statistics, it's about real people. Therefore, later on in the program, we'll hear from Georganne Burke and Jordan Sharon, two Canadians who are so alarmed by the rise in anti-Semitism that they've decided to leave the country. But now, to help us understand the scale and nature of the problem, we're joined by Noah Shack, interim president from CIJA, who will share insight into the broader trends and what can be done to combat them. Noah, thank you so much for joining me today. I appreciate your time.
Thank you for having me for this important conversation.
Absolutely. So as I mentioned earlier, there seems to have been a sharp rise in anti-Semitic incidents across the country. In your view, what is contributing to this rise?
Well, there's been an absolute explosion of anti-Jewish hate in Canada from coast to coast in cities all across the country, with synagogues being firebombed, schools being shot at repeatedly, businesses being vandalized, and individuals being harassed, intimidated, and even assaulted in the streets. We're seeing children being viciously bullied in schools, and students being ostracized by professors in the classroom on university campuses. This is an alarming time to be a Jewish Canadian, but it's not just alarming for our community. These are fundamentally attacks on our values as Canadians. And I think if you're looking at what the problem is and how we go about solving it, we have to look at it as a values issue. There are two ways that we can approach this. Either Canadians can look at this and say, that's a really big problem and it's going to be difficult to deal with it. So let's just turn the other way and ignore it and allow our society to become one that accepts this kind of behavior. Or we can get serious as a country and intervene and stand up and say, no, hatred against Jewish people or anybody else on this scale, at this scope, is absolutely fundamentally un-Canadian, and we won't stand for it. And to push our governments at all levels to speak out with one voice and take action.
Now, there's a lot going on in the world right now. So how has the current geopolitical climate, particularly obviously the tensions in the Middle East, how has that influenced attitudes or contributed to this spike in anti-Semitic behavior towards Jewish communities in Canada?
Well, there are a lot of people who are using the war in the Middle East as an excuse to justify hate and violence targeting Jews in Canada, which is not just hateful, it's ridiculous. Unfortunately, the impact is not no laughing matter. It is very, very serious. It is a crisis. And we have seen an absolute spike in anti-Jewish hate following the October 7th attacks. In fact, as early as October 8th, there were people marching through Canadian streets chanting for violence against Jews here in this country and cheerleading the Hamas attacks. That small group has grown in terms of its reach and its influence and its prominence over the last 2 years. And we have seen a systematic radicalization of Canadians through the glorification of terrorism in weekly protests, through social media messages, and the vast majority of Canadians who abhor this kind of behavior, in some cases understandably being scared, in other cases being unaware, but being relatively silent in the face of it, and letting these people get away with radicalizing Canadians, not just to hate, not just to support violence, but unfortunately to take matters into their own hands and commit violent acts and acts of terrorism.